Okay, guys, we're going to start on day 6 of Unit 2. This is our first honors topic. And this is also the third time I've started this video. It's so much fun. So, I'm gonna try to go a little fast, just to make sure I get through it, because I don't want to start it over for a fourth time. But, anyway, absolute value equations is today's topic, and we are going to be doing, so that's our honors topic. And it's very similar to solving equations, except it's just a little more rigorous, that's all. So let's go ahead and start, and I'll kind of explain it. It's better if you see what I'm talking about rather than try to understand it before you see anything. Alright, so absolute value equations. I don't think this is gonna work. Oh no. I was hoping just to have the marker, but I don't think I can. Let's do it this way, guys. I'm gonna play around a little bit. Yeah, auto hide. I don't need the marker anymore. Bad marker. Delete. Alright. So, absolute value equations. Well, in order to do them, you would need to remember what absolute values mean. So, trying to keep in mind, absolute values can only be positive. So, absolute value tells us the distance a number is from 0. The way we make it into an equation is we don't just say it's the absolute value of 3 that equals 3, or the absolute value of negative 3 equals 3. We throw the variables in there and make it a little tougher for you. But, as long as you're keeping in mind that whatever's inside the absolute value is going to tell us the distance that number is from 0, that's the key part you need to hold on to, okay? So let's go ahead and go into the instructions. We'll do a couple examples and you guys will try it on your own. Alright, so how to solve absolute value equations. So the first thing you need to do is isolate the absolute value group. So everything inside the absolute value needs to be isolated. And we use the inverse properties just like normal. So you're almost treating it like a variable. And you just need to get the absolute value stuff all on its own. Okay? Once the absolute value is all on its own, you actually split it into two equations. One equals the positive number of whatever the absolute value equals, and one equals the negative number of whatever absolute value equals. Okay? And then once we have those two equations, we split it. Now the reason we do this is because on a number line, pretend it's a line, okay? When we have 0 in the middle, and we say something has an absolute value of 3, that means there are two directions we can go. Alright, I'm doing this with not even a mouse, I'm doing it with the keypad thing. Okay? That has a distance of 3, and this has a distance of 3. Woo! Okay? But there's two different directions. What happens is the things that have a distance of 3, we have both the positive of that number of 3 and the negative of that number has a distance of 3. So because there are two sides to 0 and we're talking about distance, that's why we get two equations. That's why one is equal to the positive number 3 and one is equal to the negative number negative 3. Okay? So let's go ahead and do this with an actual equation. Alright? So here we have to solve the following equation. 2 times the absolute value minus 8 equals 28. Now, first thing you might be thinking is like, oh, I can distribute in there and I'll just simplify this side. No, you cannot do anything to this absolute value. Okay? It's not like a normal grouping symbol. It's not like parentheses. Parentheses' sole purpose is to group things together. Absolute value, though, has an additional purpose to tell us the distance something is for 0. Just like the square root, we can't distribute into the square root because we need to know that's telling us what the square root of something is. Okay? So we do not touch this absolute value until it is by itself. Okay? Now all the stuff around it, like this 2 and this minus 8, we can get rid of. And that's what we should get rid of. So pretend we need to get this by itself, not pretend. We're trying to isolate this absolute value. We need to get all this other stuff out of the way. We're still following StatMeg. We're going to undo what's added to it first, or subtracted from it, before we touch what's being multiplied with it. Okay? So you go ahead and add 8 to both sides. These 8s will cancel out. Okay? So I'm left with 2 times the absolute value of negative 2x plus 3 is equal to 38, or 36, because that's what I get when I add it. Okay? Now I can undo this 2, and I can just divide both sides by 2. Alright? because I'm multiplying and dividing the absolute value by the same number, they cancel each other out. Okay, over here, 36 divided by 2 is just 18. So I get the absolute value of negative 2x plus 3 equals 18. So that's like this. We know the distance is 18, but we don't know what the number inside the absolute value is. Okay, and more specifically, we don't know what x was to create that number. So this is where we have to split it. Now that the absolute value is the only thing on this side, we're going to create two equations. 1, 2. One equation is we just take what's in the absolute value and set it equal to 18. So negative 2x plus 3 equals 18. Because we could say the absolute value of 18 is 18. Okay? Over here, we're going to do the opposite, because the other thing that could have the absolute value of 18 would be negative 18. The negative number. Okay? So we take what's in the absolute value and set it equal to negative 18. Alright, now that we have our two equations, we just go ahead and solve them. So, both of them, we're going to solve them the same way. We're going to subtract 3 from both sides on both equations. So, here the 3's cancel out, here the 3's cancel out. So I'm left with negative x equals 15 up top. And down below, I'm left with negative 2x equals negative 21. Now I can go ahead and get x by itself by dividing both sides by negative 2. And I can do it down here as well. And then I end up getting, so up here, I'm going to get x equals negative 15 over 2, which we can go ahead and write it as a decimal. That's fine. You all need to get used to fractions. The decimal will be negative 7.5. Over here, we get 21 over 2 because the negatives cancel each other out, which is the same thing as 10.5. Okay? So what that means, because we have two different equations, we have two different x values, so those are two solutions. You should be getting two solutions for an absolute value. Okay? So that means x could be this or this, and it would make it true. Okay? So if I was going to write this in set Euler notation, I would have to write x equals 7.5 or 10.5. Okay? But those are my two answers, and that's what I would pick from it. Like, that's how I'd finish off the problem. Okay? Alright, let's try another one. Example 2, solve the following equation. So again, I need to isolate this absolute value first. Okay? Oh, and that's how I would do it. Okay? So I need to get rid of this negative 7, so I divide both sides by negative 7. I then have the absolute value of x minus 14 is equal to negative 5. Now, hold on a second. Flip back to the front page. Okay? What was the very first thing you wrote down? Okay? The question you should be asking, can an absolute value actually equal a negative number? Because that's what it says here. That the absolute value of x minus 14, or the absolute value of any number, equals negative 5. Well, no. Absolute values must always equal positive. So, when you get something like this, if you try to work it out, it's not going to make any sense, and you're going to get so lost because it's not supposed to make sense. An absolute value can't equal a negative number. That's not possible. So, what this means is that this is an example of no solution for an absolute value equation. Okay? So, once you isolate that absolute value, it is very important to make sure it makes sense. Okay? Otherwise, you're doing unnecessary work and you could possibly get the wrong answer because you didn't catch it. And if you did, it saves you so much more time. Okay? So, I've got two examples, or two try-and-runs down here. Go ahead and give them a try. We will go over it, and we will spend a lot of time next class on it. We're doing a full activity on it. So, if you have questions, write them down. We will be sure to go over this. Okay? Otherwise, I will see you later, and that's all I got. See ya!